And good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Mathematics and Science Information webinar. Thank you to the 70, almost 80 families that have joined us so far this evening. We hope this will be informative for you. Usually we would have a twilight open evening where you could ask questions, come along, meet staff, talk to students. Well, we're having to provide that online. And so if you do have questions, make sure that you've got them ready for us, because we want to answer as many as you have. That's what tonight is about, so that you can make the right choices for subject selection, which is coming up as you move from year 10 into year 11. You're most welcome. This has always been your school, and we're very pleased to be able to welcome you along and to start this 2-year journey with you. As is always the case when we gather, we tend to have a reflection or prayer, and we'll watch something for reflection in a moment. But as we do this, we'll make our own special intentions. And so in the name of the Father and the Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. And particularly I'd like to offer special intentions for those in our community who are sick, and particularly with COVID-19. We wish them the very best and ask the Lord to look after them and return them to full health. And we also remember those who, as we move into lockdown, who are alone and isolated. We pray that they know of our prayerful support for them, and that will strengthen them, and the Lord will be with them. So now I'll hand over and we'll watch reflection. This evening your MC will be Andrew Molliker, and I thank you for joining us.
Life can bring us storms. Those moments where we wander, wonder, doubt. The journey doesn't stop, but the progress does. It can be lonely, painful. Sometimes we try to stare it down, as if we could somehow will it to go away. Or we think we can go toe-to-toe and come out the other side, unscathed. We often forget just how small we are. The truth is, storms are inevitable. But when they appear, we have a protector, a savior who knows a thing or two about calming storms. A God who is a stronghold in times of trouble. In our weakness, He is strong. In our fear, He is courage. In our desperation, He is peace. Yes, storms are inevitable, but our God is invincible.
So thank you again for coming along this evening. I'll hand over to Andrew Molliker, who's our Director of Pathways, and Andrew will be your MC for this evening. Thank you, Andrew.
Sorry, I've just lost the presentation, but first of all, my name is Andrew Molliker. I'm the Director of Pathways here at the college, and I'll be hosting this evening. Let me start by welcoming you all our new families and students to the college. We hope that this year, this will be the start of a new relationship that we're able to forge together. to support your child to achieve their future pathway goal. Joining me this evening is an array of panelists ready to give their information to you and answer your questions. With me this evening, of course, I have Brendan with me this evening. I have the Deputy Principal in Chantal Gauchi with me this evening. Also on the panel this evening, we have our Learning Area Convener for Mathematics, Satnesh Lingam. We also welcome our Learning Area Convener for Science, Fiona Heathcote. And we have some teachers of mathematics and science here with us as well, in Sophie Salibi and Lauren Fabreo. Our learning area captains, we also have a student perspective this evening, I should add. We have our learning area captains for mathematics here this evening. We have Carl Severino with us. I think he's here with us this evening. And we also have our learning area captain for science, Abby McGregor. So we welcome them all. I'm going to have to, I apologise for this, but I'm going to have to find the PowerPoint. It's gone down. So I'll just, I'll attempt to find this. I'm going to throw over to Satnesh, who's going to kick us off this evening. Okay. So Satnesh, if you could just begin talking about maths, and I'll get the PowerPoint up. I apologise for this. You there, Satnesh?
Thank you, Andrew. First of all, once again, I'd like to welcome all the families who have joined us tonight. We are here tonight to share with you some information which can be very useful to you guys in when it comes to selecting your subjects for when the students join us for the BC programs here. I'll take you briefly through.
Can you see that, Satnesh?
Yes, I can see that, Andrew. Thank you. All right, so I'll take you through the PowerPoint slide, which you should be able to see on your screens right now. Here at Sydenham, we offer, there are 6 different math subjects which students can pick up. As you can see on your screen, normally the units 1 and 2 subjects, they are done at year 11 level. And then we have got units 3 and 4, further maths, mathematical methods, and specialist maths, which are done at year 12 level. Now, we do have the option. Some students, we do offer them the option of picking up further mathematics at year 11 level, which of course involves a separate application process. And normally students who have done really well in year 10 maths have got really good scores in the assessment. And then after going through a formal application process and having gone through an interview with one of the members of the leadership team here at school, then we do offer that option to the students there. So I will take you through a couple of options. Andrew, can we go on the next slide, please? Right. I have put down the first option there as option 0. And the reason I have done that is to just give a quick overview. If a student does not pick any maths in year 11, he or she does not have the option of doing any maths in year 12, right? So that's something that we have to be mindful of in regards to if you need any maths for your maybe university studies, TAFE, or whatever it might be. So it's always a good idea to pick at least one math subject at year 11. Then that allows you the option to pick some maths at year 12 also. Now looking at the next possible option, if the student picks up, let's say, general maths units 1 and 2 in year 11, which we normally say is the easier or the easiest of the 3 maths. If they do general maths unit 1 and 2, then they have the option of doing further maths in year 12. Also keeping in mind, if students do only general maths in year 11, then they don't have the option of doing methods or specialist in year 12, right? So there's something that we also have to take note of. And for that to happen, of course, at year 10, you would have done either core or essential maths. Right, next one. If a student chooses to do maths methods, units 1 and 2 at in year 11, then of course, that opens up more pathways for them for year 12 maths. So as you can see on the far right column, doing methods units 1 and 2 in year 11 gives you the option of doing methods 3, 4 in year 12. It also opens up the option of doing further maths with methods. And then you can also pick up specialist maths at year 12. Now, I'll just make a note here. Even if students haven't done specialist maths units 1 and 2 in year 11, they still have the option of doing special in year 12, but we highly recommend that you do units 1 and 2 first, and then, you know, that builds a good foundation for you to do units 3, 4. Right, Andrew, next one, Andrew. Next slide, Andrew. Yep. All right, now at year 11, students also have the option of doing methods and specialist, both. Now, specialist maths being an enrichment subject for us. So if you are picking up specialist maths at year 11, you do have to pick up maths methods also. So they go together. Students cannot just do specialist maths on its own. They need to pick up methods 1 and 2. And then again, as you can see, that leads to quite a few options for year 12. Right? In fact, any student who does methods and specialist in year 11, which is, you know, the harder of the maths, they have the most possible options for maths in year 12. And of course, to get into methods and special at year 11, you would have done a core plus or essential plus in year 10. It's compulsory. And of course, you know, you would have had really good results in your assessment tasks. We are looking at something like at least, you know, 80 to 85 plus in every assessment task across the board. Right, next one. Yep, and then finally, I think I did mention I had mentioned this before also. Students, we do offer the option at year 11 for students to pick up a unit 3 and 4 further maths. Right, so while in year 11 they can do a year 12 subject, unit 3 and 4, provided, of course, you know, they're really good at maths and they enjoy the subject. They have done core plus or essential plus at year 10, having scored good results in the assessment tasks. And then if you do further maths, any year 11 student who does further maths, with that, they also have to pick up maths methods units 1 and 2. Right? So those two go together, right? The combination. And of course, to pick up further maths at year 11, you need to obtain an application form and then fill that in, and then, you know, there's a separate process for you to get into further maths at year 11. Right, Andrew. The last slide. A couple of things to make note of. Of course, to do VC maths, you know, all of you will need to have a CAS calculator. I think most schools, most year 10s have already got it. You can continue using that. If not, you need to buy one. And then some of the things that we can see here, if you're picking up specialist maths at year 11 or further maths, right, with that you must select maths methods, right? They go together. And students who are you know, wishing to enroll, wishing to do specialist maths units 3 and 4 in year 12, we highly recommend that you also do spec 1 and 2. And then the final point I've put down there is, if you're doing, you know, if you intend to do specialist maths in year 12, you must choose methods. So methods and special go together in year 12.
Is that it, Satnesh?
Right, Andrew. Yep, that's, yep.
Okay, so to our parents and students out there, we have a Q&A section at the bottom of the panel. Please post any questions that you may have. We've got Sophie on hand. We've got obviously Satnesh on hand, and also Chantal teaches some maths, and we've got Carl who's also on hand to answer some of these questions. So at the moment, we don't have any questions posted in the question and answer box. Okay, here's our first question. What is the minimum required score to get into math methods? So to our panelists.
Right, if you want, I could answer that. So to get into maths methods in year 11, we are looking at an average of at least 80% across all the assessment tasks in year 10.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, Andrew, I'll add to that a little bit too. And I think that just in terms of when we're talking about a minimum score for maths, it's not that we want to preclude anybody from doing a higher level maths. It's just that we want kids to succeed in their choices and allow them to make really good choices. And so we also say, so for kids to be adequately prepared for math methods, that there are certain levels of mathematics that are completed at each of the Federation schools that they really need to ensure that they've done so that they're ready and prepared. And I think when the students come in for their course selection interviews, we'll be able to talk through those Federation maths levels with them.
Here's another great question. What type of support is there for students that are having difficulty with maths?
I'll answer that. Here in school, this year and, for the past couple of years, we have been running a maths help program every Tuesday afternoon. So every week, every Tuesday afternoon, we have got all the maths teachers coming together, as a group, and we are able to provide that one-on-one help to all students. So, that's something which I've been running for some years now, and, we'll continue that next year also. So students have that option.
I'm just looking through the list of questions here. A question about Core Plus at Year 10. Now, do we know anything? What is the Core Plus program that was under Year 10? This is coming from I think it might be a Year 10 student. I suppose the question might be around how does Core Plus line up with what we're doing at Sydenham?
I'm presuming, I think that the Core Plus program is actually the one that's undertaken at CRC St Albans, possibly. And so therefore, from what I understand, that Core Plus is actually one of the programs which leads into or naturally progresses into math methods. And so therefore, whatever was taught at CRC St Albans in Core Plus are probably the units which are most likely going to prepare you for math methods.
I'm looking through some of the other questions. Hopefully our panelists can see those questions as well. To our panelists, please feel free to type in some answers, and we'll try to clear these from our screens. A question here from Francesca asking about whether the grade of around a 70 to 80 average will get her into math methods. Anyone want to try to answer that?
Yep, I could go for that. As part of our subject selection process, all the students, they have an interview with their subject teachers, and we also have teachers from CRC Sydenham, sitting with the student one-on-one, having that interview. So sometimes, strictly speaking, if the student hasn't got, the required minimum 80%, sometimes, through that interview, we are able to ascertain that, maybe this student is, a good candidate or a strong candidate for the subject. And we have options for them. We do allow those students in, right? So that will happen after we have that interview with the student. So it's not strictly that if you haven't got, that required 80%, it's a no-no. No, we still have options for the students.
Here's another question from Diana. Is it too much for students to do math methods and specialist maths together?
The workload would be higher. Of course, spec and methods, they are the heart of the maths. But then again, I think it comes down to what they want to do after finishing year 12. Some courses at uni do require students to get a study score in methods or in spec. And the reason why we have put those together, because if you're doing SPECH, then methods, doing methods, it builds a good foundation, for the students to get into SPECH. So yes, I would say the workload would be higher, right? But yeah. So
and Nesh, if I can, my understanding, and not being a maths teacher, so I'm going to ask Chantel in a moment to respond to this. My understanding is that students in year 12, when they're looking at their getting a higher score, the maths methods and the specialist maths units can complement each other, and students who have done them both together at the same time as a 3-4 sequence actually do better with their scores because of that complementary nature. So it's not that there's a higher workload, but there's going to be a higher workload with any subject that you're doing. You're still going to have the same number of subjects. So the content, though, can actually be complementary. Chantal, do you want to add to that one?
Yeah, Brendan, I think that, there are certain groups of subjects that work really, really well together. And math methods and specialist maths are definitely a pairing which work really well together. And I think too, physics probably fits into that a little bit as well, with the maths and numeracy requirements for that subject as well. There are other groupings that Fiona will probably talk a little bit about later on. There are certain units in chemistry which are the same in biology, and they work together with health and human development. So there are subjects which complement each other, and it's just natural that if you do a topic in one particular subject, that's going to allow you to probably be a little bit more comfortable and confident in completing it in another. And so that's the reason why that, we think that doing two subjects like specialist maths and methods go together really well in the same year. I think that, yes, it is definitely, it is a big workload doing specialist maths and math methods together. But one of the things that I always say to kids is that if you love maths, then it's not about the workload, it's about your passion for wanting to complete these subjects. And, yes, you're going to have to be going home. A lot of your time is going to be spent doing maths, but if you really love those subjects, then it's not going to be a major issue for you.
I have a question here from Cassidy asking about being currently in isolation and their results may not be a true reflection of their ability, and will this be taken into consideration? I can answer from the point of view that normally we would have undertaken some academic year 10 testing, and that hasn't happened with isolation, obviously, and the COVID. However, what we will be taking into account are your year 9 and 10 semester reports, as well as your year 9 NAPLAN data. So all the data that we have available to us, we will be taking all of that into consideration when trying to get a gauge on where your maths ability lies. Yep. I'm just
sorry, Andrew. There's a few questions around, the level that's required to get into certain mathematics. And I think instead of thinking of it like that, I think if we sort of move away and say, we just want the very best for these kids. We want these kids to come into year 11 and to have a consistent program. As much as possible, we do not want kids changing their subjects halfway through the year, because that only causes disruption for them, and it causes disruption for others as well if we have to cancel classes. So we want consistency, and we want kids to be happy, and kids are happy when they're achieving and they're successful in their subjects. Math methods and specialist maths, they are extremely difficult, and so you're making that decision for the year, and so you should make it really wisely, because you want to succeed, you want to be happy, and you want to be successful.
I'm just conscious, we've also got Sophie with this. Sophie, do you want to add to this conversation, being a maths teacher?
I think that if you're passionate about it, then why not? Sorry, yeah. If you're just passionate about the subject, you should do it. I think maths is really fun, and I'm sure that if you find it that way as well, you actually enjoy doing that homework. You'll want to put in more time into it to be able to do well. And in VCE, you always want to play to your strengths. So if you are good at maths, then that is going to inevitably help you to do well in your ATAR score for later on.
Now, I'd like to hear from a student doing maths at our school. Is Carl there? Is Carl with us? No, he's not. Okay. So I'm just conscious of time. So we've got all these questions that are coming in. We have the ability to print these out and basically look at the questions that have come in, and we can address them and try to get back to our parents and students who have these questions, because again, these are things that are going to come up in the interviews that you have with staff, and knowing the questions and being ready for the questions, we'll try to answer them as best we can when we actually see you in those sessions. So I want to now throw it over to Fiona, who's going to talk about science. Okay. So thanks to our maths panelists. I'll share my screen and throw over to Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good evening. You all know my name by now. It's Fiona Heathcote. I teach chemistry and physics at CRC, and we've also got Abby here tonight, who is our science learning area captain, and she's studying biology and chemistry this year. So she's a good one to have here and to share a bit of her experience as a student studying science. Chantal is also a teacher of chemistry, and Sophie has taught biology also. So we've got a few people on the panel who can put their hands up as to teaching science. When I was thinking about what to talk with you this evening and how to put this into context for students in terms of them trying to choose the subjects that they might be interested in or thinking about where they lead, I've got on the screen at the moment a list of our science subjects, and I was also thinking about the current situation that we find ourselves in and the reason that we are doing this webinar this evening and how science fits into that. So COVID-19, I was thinking about all of the areas in which science is playing a role in fighting this situation or enabling us to communicate. Of course, we've got medical research, we've got laboratory technicians who are processing those tests, and we offer vet laboratory skills here too. Thinking about the doctors, nurses, all of those other specialists, all of those people working in health, whether they be therapists or what have you, to help people recover. Of course, the importance of communication, so that marriage of science and technology there. We're able to communicate this evening through the amazing World Wide Web, using Wi-Fi in our homes, computers, the chemistry coming into the batteries that are powering our computers and our other devices that we're using. Thinking about the environmental impact of this pandemic that we face in terms of the waste that we might be producing, but also a reduction in manufacturing and transport and the effects that that has on the environment. And these are some of the things we consider in environmental science. And also the study of psychology. So how are we responding as individuals to the situations that we're finding ourselves in? So learning about how the brain works and about natural processes that take place. So they were just some of the things I was thinking about, because often students might be thinking, well, if I study science, where will that lead? And you can think of the big ticket items. I think a lot of students think of things like medicine and dentistry, but you might want to work on the Great Barrier Reef, for instance, or you might be interested in just about anything. There are so many different fields. It's amazing. I think often that we're not exposed to them in our day-to-day life. So it's not until you get to university or beyond school that you also have your world opening up as to what's on offer out there in science. Could I have the next slide, please, Andrew? So what I did this evening was put together some of the complementary subjects. So if you're thinking about studying one of these science subjects, what is it that you're passionate about? What are you interested in? What do you enjoy studying? And what other subjects go well with them? Now, I've focused here this evening, or you'll see for just about everything I've put down English, because English is really important for you in order to be able to undertake these subjects successfully. The amount of subject-specific literacy and literacy in general that's required is quite significant. The language demands are quite heavy. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. We do have, for instance, with biology, goes very well, as Chantal mentioned earlier, with chemistry. When we are looking at organic chemistry, this overlaps with biology too. Environmental science and psychology, and also vet laboratory skills fit well if you're looking at putting together a program of subjects, just as we were discussing with maths earlier, that work nicely. When we get to a subject like chemistry, English, once again, very important, also quite complementary with biology, environmental science and physics. I think physics and chemistry students are often surprised at the amount of overlap, which enhances their understanding in each of those subjects, and just as it is for chemistry and biology. If you're undertaking chemistry, then you would want to be undertaking a mathematics of some sort as well, either further or even math methods is often a really good one too. It just helps you to deal with the mathematic demands of those subjects if you are confident with maths. Next slide, please, Andrew. For environmental science, I think that this sits really well. There's sort of a bit of an overlap now because I've covered these in some of the other subjects, but you can see the complementary subjects that go there. When we get to something like physics, I really would be recommending a minimum of maths methods in order to successfully undertake that, and of course specialists too. There are concepts that we cover in physics that are also covered in methods and specialist, and once again complement each other very well, which deepens students' understanding of particular topics. Psychology, so English and biology I think are really complementary to those two. Psychology mentioned before, you know, the study of the brain, and so that fits in nicely with the biology in terms of the understanding of what's going on right down to a cellular level. If you're going to consider undertaking vet laboratory skills, then you would be looking at undertaking biology and chemistry. There is a fair amount of each of those in vet lab skills, and also have some sort of maths. And in that instance, I would say general maths would be sufficient. But of course, if you were carrying it on into year 2, and then also doing further mathematics, because there is a mathematics component of that course also. Next slide, please, Andrew. I feel like I'm skipping through these quite quickly. I've got here that we don't really have any prerequisites or co-requisites required for science. It's a little bit different to maths. However, that said, I think it's really about your achievement at year 10 as to whether or not these subjects are going to be suitable for you. They are considered to be more difficult subjects, so you would want to be thinking quite carefully about whether or not this is for you. Now, Abby, to put you on the spot, is there something that you would like to say from a student's perspective about science, or perhaps some of the qualities you think a science student might want to have?
I would just say that if you wanted to do a science, you'd obviously have to be really passionate about it. It is a lot of work. There is a lot of content in science subjects. So I would say that if you are passionate about it, then you'll do well because you want to put in the effort. And I think that if, you know, this is something that you want to pursue in the future, then doing a science and being really passionate about it would be the best idea. You wouldn't want to choose it if it wasn't something you were interested in.
Thanks, Abby. I think that's right. There is a fair amount of work associated with these subjects, and I think, as was mentioned earlier too with maths, if it is something that you love and that you are passionate about and that you enjoy studying, then the demands don't seem quite as great because you are doing something that you enjoy. Just a few more points here on the screen is that I think that you really should choose subjects based on interest, but I think that notion of also choosing complementary subjects is really important for you because of the way that these subjects, you know, go well together in terms of their ways of thinking and their ways of assessing too. I think students find it easier in some regards if they have a suite of subjects that just, you know, fit very nicely together. I think the other important thing is that the step up from year 10 to year 11 is quite a significant one. So there can be a bit of an adjustment at first when you hit year 11 in terms of the demands and the additional work required to maintain grades that you might have been getting in year 10. So you would expect to see a progression and an improvement across the year there also, so when you get into year 11. I think that's all I've got to say this evening, if anyone then has any questions for us.
Okay, so this is your chance now to, for those of you looking to undertake a science subject next year to start posting some questions for the panel.
I can see that there is a question here about environmental science, and I've got to say that that is the one that I am probably least familiar with in terms of being able to talk about that. It does look at systems, so global systems, so looking at a whole range of things actually. They consider pollution and measures to overcome that. They also look at ecosystems and effects on ecosystems. I know at the moment at school we've got some experiments running for them which are actually self-sustaining. I looked at them yesterday and thought they were growing quite well, where they're looking at I suppose ecosystems for plants that are still growing. So they've been unattended now for quite some time and they're still growing, which is great. We can come back to you with some more information about the course itself. There is also information in the handbook.
Here's a question, Fiona, or any of the other science panelists. If you do not undertake a Unit 1 and 2 bio, would you be permitted to, would you be allowed to undertake a 3-4 bio in Year 12?
It is possible. I think I would always recommend doing Units 1 and 2 for any science subjects that you're wanting to pursue in Units 3 and 4. Chemistry and physics, obviously, that I am more familiar with, then I would certainly recommend doing Units 1 and 2 because there becomes a lot of assumed knowledge that carries over from Units 1 and 2 into 3 and 4. Chantal, are you able to elaborate on that for biology?
I might chime in first if I can, Fiona.
Sorry, Brenton,
if it's for the reason that you're wanting to choose another science, in Year 11, the whole structure of the VCE is that you can choose semesterised units. So you could do one semester of biology, one semester of, say, chemistry, and certainly Chantal or one of the teachers could advise you on which unit would really be needed to set you up for the Unit 3, 4 in Year 12. You don't have to do a whole year of a subject. You can actually do semesterised units, and we have certain subjects that just run for a semester, but if you specifically wanted to try environmental science as well as, say, someone's written about systems engineering, they wanted to try systems engineering, or they wanted to try chemistry, and then they knew they wanted to do physics with maths methods and specialist maths, and they were filling up their subjects, they could actually semesterise it. So that's often the reason we get that question. It might be behind that particular person asking the question.
We've got a question here about systems engineering falling under the science category. No, it falls under the technology category. Does health and human development and geography complement biology and chemistry? I could speak about health and human development. Yes, it definitely complements biology because there are elements that are shared with human anatomy. Geography and chemistry, anyone?
Geography is more linked to environmental science, as would outdoor and environmental education. But Chantal, do you want to take over that one?
Yeah, look, health and human development definitely lends itself to biology. And geography is definitely environmental science. Very limited amounts of those contents would probably appear in the chemistry section.
Fiona, we're getting a question about the workload in science and the hours needed to be put into subjects each week.
I suppose what I would be thinking was that students would be looking at doing for their entire coursework or course load, 3 to 4 hours a night. And so that would be broken down for each subject. But I think regardless of what subject you were looking at, if you're wanting to experience success in that, then you would be needing to commit yourself to a significant amount of work.
If you were interested in doing biology or psychology, but are very interested in maths, whilst it may not be complementary, would this still be advantageous to do math methods? You spoke about the combination of maths and sciences, didn't you, Fiona?
Yeah, a bit in terms of, you know, what might actually help you to do those subjects. So if you're interested in doing methods, then I'd certainly be happy for that.
I think one of the most important things to think about is, you know, do you have any plans beyond year 12? Have you got any thoughts about what you're going to do after year 12? And then if you do, then start looking at what are your prerequisite studies for those university courses. I know that for psychology-based university courses, a lot of the mathematics in those courses are based around statistics. And so further mathematics is a really good one in terms of statistics. But it's really based around what university you go to, what courses you're planning on doing, you know, ensuring that you're fulfilling your prerequisite studies for any of the courses.
Here's another great question, Fiona, about is there similar support for science subjects to in what's offered for maths?
There is indeed. We offer weekly support sessions for biology, chemistry and physics. There's not so much demand for environmental science. Psychology have not tended to run help sessions, nor has lab skills, but that runs as a big long block too, so there's less of a need for a help session with that particular subject.
There's a question here about HHD and VCEPE. That's basically belongs to the personal development department, not the science department, but the question's asking anyway, can you do these two subjects together? Yes, it would be highly recommended that you do those two subjects together. What are the minimum grades needed to get into chemistry?
Look, I would say similar to looking at the grades required to get into those math subjects is that we are looking for students who are performing highly in those subjects. So, you know, 80 would be nice, probably a bit like maths as well, is that we would consider other grades for those subjects. They're quite demanding. So yes, and I noticed there's another question here too about, sorry, there was a question there about whether past grades would affect whether or not you get into certain classes such as chemistry. I mean, when these are the things that we're using to determine students' entry into these subjects, then yes, they would.
Abby? I think to think about, sorry, Andrew, just around the fact that for chemistry, which is, you know, very different to the maths, is that you really need some strong skills both in numeracy and literacy, because obviously there's a lot of calculations to do, but on top of all of that, there's also the analysis questions, which are really difficult. And, you know, in terms of year 12 examiners for chemistry, they're extremely pedantic about the way that we answer or provide responses. So literacy and numeracy are both really important. There's a level of expected knowledge coming into year 11, and so, you know, it's more than just what is my grades. It's about, you know, do you have a base knowledge that you can continue to build on, and are you happy and passionate about that subject area too?
Abby, I was wondering if you could share your science story, some of the sciences, some of the subjects you're doing around your sciences, and what subjects you found to be complementary.
So I'm currently doing biology and chemistry, and I finished psychology last year. And I've definitely found that, for me, I found that psychology and biology were complementary. There was a lot about, in psych, there's a lot of focus on like neurons, and then in biology, we talk about cells as well. Neurons came up, so it was good to have that knowledge as well. And then the same thing with biology and chemistry. I found that there's a lot of overlap, so it was good to have almost that double up of knowledge. So it really helps you to learn it better because you were learning it twice.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks for that. Just a couple more questions before we need to move on. Another question here. What science subject would you recommend if you were choosing a pathway of for ICT? Is physics okay? Does physics match up with sort of that ICT pathway?
I think it would depend on where you were wanting to end up and what kind of course you were going into there. You might find that systems engineering might also be a good match. I think it yeah, it depends on the course and where you're heading. In physics, we do a little bit in terms of electronics. So from that side of it, yeah.
Is Lauren?
So I'm not quite sure unless I know where you're going with that.
Is
course.
Lauren with us?
No, she's not.
Okay. So you want to talk about some of the science subjects you teach?
I've only taught biology in the past.
What's your?
It's a beautiful life science, I suppose. Yeah, if you're really focused on in terms of the body, processes, systems of the body, that's really what biology is around. There is a little bit of chemistry to it, but especially at year 11, there isn't that much of a focus. But as Fiona said, they do complement each other quite well because there are going to be elements of chemistry throughout it, I think, particularly as they get to year 12 biology. But yeah, biology is a lot more focused on the body, more so in semester 2. And then in semester 1, we also look at plants and cells and the environment in that aspect. So it's quite good because it gives you a perspective of different types of sciences.
I think later on when you get into biology and you're looking at things like inheritance and DNA and looking at the structure of DNA, then that does overlap with organic chemistry that we do later on in Unit 4, where we're actually looking at the structure of proteins and the bonding that takes place there. So it does give you that deeper understanding. So if you are doing biology and chemistry together, it sort of, comes at it from two different directions.
We'll only take a couple more questions. I've got a question here from Paul. He's wanting a career in the military and he's considering combining psychology with physics. I don't know if you've come across students who've had that combination before, Fiona.
We don't have many students doing both psychology and physics. So I do have a physics student this year who did psychology last year. I think it depends. If you are going into the military, is that because you're entering ADFA and you're doing a particular course there? I think I would be having a look at their entrance requirements and what then might be leading you to make those subject selections. I think that you would also want to be considering what is it that you are interested in, only because that's probably a less common combination. Certainly doable, but yeah, think about why you would be choosing those two.
Okay, look, we've had some great questions this evening from both our maths people and our science people. There's going to be an opportunity for you to bring all these questions with you to the interviews, which is actually what I want to speak about next. So I'll go back to the PowerPoint and share my screen. Right. Okay, so where to from here? On Thursday, the 13th of August, Caroline Springs will have their subject selection interviews. And I'll talk more about each individual school in a moment. St Albans has theirs on Friday, the 14th of August, and North Keilor on Wednesday, the 19th of August. So students right now will have been discussing their subject selection with parents, their pathway teachers at their schools, and given subject selection forms. Now, you can't get it wrong. From that, I mean, you should be given several subject selection forms, and you've had several attempts at this, and you've redrafted, and you may have done this 3 or 4 times, 5 times. But you finally got it down to the subjects that you want to choose, okay? Please bring that form along with you to the interview, because that will form the basis of the discussion that happens at the interview. So in putting your selections down on that page, you should have been referred to the 2021 Student Handbook, which you'll find on the CRC Sydenham website. It's under the Teaching and Learning tab on the website across the top. As well as this, we've produced these videos like this evening, different webinars that basically explain to you the web preference process. And you'll find these under a tab called Class of 2021, and it's under our community tab, which is across the top on that web page. Now, each student will be interviewed by a teacher from their own school in combination with a teacher from CRC Sydenham. So there'll be 2 people at your interview. Each interview will last for about 15 minutes. At that interview, we're going to be looking at things like your academic results. So things like your Year 9 NAP plan data and your Year 9 and 10 school reports to ensure that you've listed the correct subjects. Okay, and the subjects that you've selected are the ones you want to go ahead with in a pathway that you've chosen for yourself. Now, students are also, I've said this, bring their subject selection form to the interview, and that again will help the interview process. Okay, and then we will take those subjects and live on screen in that online session, in that interview, you will see the web preferences being typed into your particular student profile. So just to reiterate those dates again, CRC Caroline Springs, your interviews are on the 13th of August. This will be conducted via Microsoft Teams. Your school make arrangements for the interview times, and the associated invitation to attend will be sent to you. For CRC St Albans students, your interviews are on the 14th of August. You'll be doing this via Google Meets. Now, these platforms are very familiar with the students at those schools. So your school will make arrangements for interview times and an associated invitation to the Google Meet to attend will be arranged for you. And finally, for our North Keilor students, your interviews will be on the 19th of August. These will be conducted by the CRC Sydenham staff, and we'll be doing that via Zoom. So here's technology at work, 3 different schools, 3 different platforms. CRC Sydenham will make arrangements, and you'll basically book interview times via your PTO, all right? The same system that's used to book parent-teacher interviews. And again, in that interview, you'll be given an invitation to attend a Zoom link that basically will have you meet with staff. So basically, that's it. That sort of concludes the night. Thank you for all our panelists for attending this evening. Thank you for answering all the questions. I don't know if our panelists want to finish by making any final remarks. No? We are...
Andrew, I might. There's been quite a lot of questions with regards to careers and career pathways. On the final one of these webinars, there's a general question and answer session, and we will endeavour to have our careers team present on that night so you can answer those questions. If there's a real need, we'll look for a specific time where interviews can happen with our careers team and families can make appointments. So any support you need, we're here to give, and hopefully you found tonight informative and useful. So thank you very much for coming along to all of you.
Just to back up what Brendan said, we realise that we've got many questions. So there will be a night on Wednesday, the 12th of August, where our members of our leadership team will try to answer a whole set of general questions that parents and students may have. So in this time of isolation, I suppose we're all doing our best to try to give you as much information as we possibly can. So thank you for attending this evening. I wish you all a good evening. Good night.